Hello and a very good morning. You're watching the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Let's begin with the latest headlines. Signals of dissent in Delhi BJP out in the open. Supporters of party leaders, including the state party chief, protest denial of tickets. Government rejects opposition charge on misusing the ordinance route, says previous governments have brought in ordinances at the rate of one a month. International Monetary Fund says India's growth rate to surpass China in 2016 scales down growth projections for world economy. Carrying forward the momentum from the RBI's rate cut, market indices hit record high. Sensex surges 550 points to touch 28,800 points. And Indonesia says the ill-fated Air Asia flight QZ8501 climbed too fast, causing it to stall and crash into the Java Sea. Well, the rift within the BJP over naming former top cop Kiran Bedi as the chief ministerial candidate for the upcoming Delhi polls is out in the open. Supporters of leaders who have been denied a ticket for the forthcoming polls protested openly yesterday, though the party leadership maintains all is well within. Here's more.
Dissent in the BJP over ticket distribution spilled onto the streets, with supporters of the party's Delhi unit chief Satish Upadhyay and other ticket aspirants staging protests. There was another group which shouted slogans against Upadhyay and party MP Ramesh Bidhuri. In the list of candidates released by the party on Monday night, Upadhyay has not been given a ticket. However, Upadhyay himself said he was not disappointed by the party's decision. He in fact said that not contesting the elections was his personal choice.
ये तो क्षणिक चीजें हैं, चलती रहती हैं, लेकिन हमको किरण बेदी जी के नेतृत्व में पार्टी को यहाँ जिता करके लाना है। सवाल ही पैदा नहीं होता। पार्टी से नाराजगी, और मैं पार्टी का कार्यकर्ता हूँ, और पार्टी का कार्यकर्ता होने के नाते मेरी ये जिम्मेवारी है, और डे वन से मैंने कहा है कि मुझे 70 सीटों पर चुनाव लड़ना है, 70 जगह कमल खिलाने हैं।
There was open display of dissent elsewhere too. BJP leader Dheer Singh Bidhuri and 4 block presidents from the Okhla quit the party over denial of ticket to the leader. BJP Delhi unit vice president Shikha Rai's supporters also protested outside the party's offices, shouting slogans to protest the denial of ticket to her.
शिखा जी पिछले 2.5 साल से क्षेत्र में लगी हुई थी, उनको 2200 वोटों से हारी थी। पिछली बार सेकंड नंबर पे थी। जो रविंद्र चौधरी को टिकट दिया गया, तीसरे नंबर पे था। ये इतना करप्टेड है, 2 इलेक्शनों में विरोध किया था पार्टी का, फिर पार्टी ने इनको टिकट दिया है।
बिल्कुल अनदेखे। और ये मैं मंडल का मंत्री हूँ कस्तूरबा नगर से, और मुझे पता ही नहीं रविंद्र चौधरी कौन है। मैंने आज तक उसका चेहरा नहीं देखा।
On Monday night, the party had said that Upadhyay will not be contesting the elections but instead manage the election campaign. But this show of open dissent could be a cause for worry for the BJP.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी के कार्यकर्ता वो एक विचार के लिए, एक सिद्धांत के लिए, समाज धर्म और राष्ट्र धर्म और मानव कल्याण के लिए काम करते हैं। वो केवल अपने व्यक्तिगत लाभ के लिए काम नहीं करते। हो सकता है कोई मुट्ठी भर लोग misguided हों।
Sources say that several senior party leaders were unhappy with Kiran Bedi being projected as the chief ministerial candidate days after being inducted into the party. However, party chief Amit Shah dismissed all these reports of dissent while announcing the decision. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, the Election Commission has issued a show-cause notice to Aam Aadmi Party chief Arvind Kejriwal for violating the poll code by allegedly asking voters to take bribes. The Election Commission notice said that the statement made during a public rally on January 18th amounts to abetting and promoting electoral offence of bribery. In the rally, Kejriwal had asked voters to take money from the BJP and the Congress but only vote for his party. The Election Commission has asked Kejriwal to respond and be present, or rather present his side by 4 p.m. tomorrow, failing which the poll body shall take a decision without any further reference to him. Earlier on January 17, Kejriwal was issued a show-cause notice by the Election Commission for violating the model code, with his remarks alleging that the BJP is trying to incite communal violence in Delhi.
Complaint has been filed by Congress, and also I think there is a report in your print media also, in your electronic media also, that you take money and vote for me.
Moving on now, the centre has countered the opposition's charge on excessive ordinance route taken by the government so far. In its defence, it said previous governments have brought in almost one ordinance per month in the last 62 years. Parliamentary Affairs Minister Venkaiah Naidu asserted that the ordinances were necessary to clear policy logjam.
The government faced a series of attacks from the opposition parties over the government's ordinance route. The sharp reactions came a day after President Pranab Mukherjee raised objection to frequent ordinances on key issues. He called for an understanding between the government and opposition to avoid repeated disruptions in Parliament.
President's words should be taken very seriously by the people in power. You know, whenever we were in power, it was unavoidable circumstances. We were forced to bring some ordinances. Such ordinances were also severely criticized by BJP. Now they are bringing ordinance in an unprecedented manner.
The NDA government attacked the opposition parties. Parliamentary Affairs Minister Venkaiah Naidu said the government was forced to take the ordinance route because the opposition parties continue to disrupt the proceedings of the Parliament on one pretext or the other. According to the minister, it is a trend set by previous governments.
Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister, he opposed ordinance during the discussion during the British regime. But at the same time, he vehemently insisted for a provision in the Constitution to issue ordinances during the discussion in the Constituent Assembly. And he himself, when he was the Prime Minister, has got 70 ordinances issued during his regime.
Venkaiah Naidu said that the government plans to introduce all ordinances in the forthcoming budget session. He also sought the support of the opposition parties in approving the policy change.
So we have decided to call a meeting of the CCPA tomorrow to discuss about the forthcoming budget session and its schedule. And you need to give a 15 days notice for the members so that they can also give notice for questions, etc.
Naidu said that the government plans to meet with leaders of all political parties this week. It will attempt to solicit the support of all opposition parties to ensure a smooth budget session. Rajkamal Rao's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh is reported to have been examined by the CBI in the coal block allocation case relating to Hindalco. PTI reports that, according to informed sources, a team of CBI officials examined the former Prime Minister at his residence 2 days ago. The CBI is to file a status report before a special CBI court by the 27th of January. The sources said Singh was examined about the developments which took place in the Ministry of Coal as well as the Prime Minister's office after industrialist Kumar Mangalam Birla had written 2 letters to then Prime Minister requesting for allocation of Talabira, the second coal block, to Hindalco. The court had directed the CBI to examine the then Coal Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh on various aspects of the coal block allocation in the company. And here's a look at some big news-making events lined up for today in our special segment, The Day Ahead. The Union Cabinet is likely to take a decision on 3G spectrum prices in a meeting this evening. On Monday, the Telecom Commission had suggested a base price of 3,705 crore rupees per megahertz as a 3G spectrum base price for the upcoming auction. Based on this reserve price, the Exchequer is likely to earn around 18,500 crore rupees from auctioning of the 5 megahertz. It's the last day for filing nomination papers for the Delhi Assembly elections. All the bigwigs in the fray, Kiran Bedi, Arvind Kejriwal and Ajay Markan, will file their papers today. Kejriwal was unable to file his nomination yesterday as he reached late. Voting in the national capital will be held on February 7th. A Russian delegation is in India. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu is to hold talks with his Indian counterpart Manohar Parrikar and review the ongoing cooperation and future prospects in the defense sector. The Russian delegation is also expected to raise the issue of the much-delayed joint production of a 5th-generation fighter aircraft and BrahMos mini-missile. Today is the 10th raising day of the National Disaster Response Force. A celebration event will be held at the Kothari Auditorium, DRDO Bhavan in New Delhi. The event will be graced by Union Home Minister Rajnath Singh. The NDRF has also arranged a live demonstration event at the open-air theatre in Pragati Maidan to create awareness about disaster management and effective response. Well, today is also the 25th anniversary of the Parliament Security Service. Celebrations will be held at the Banquet Hall of Parliament Library Building, which will be attended by security service officers of both the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha secretariats. Secretary Generals of both houses will grace the occasion. The 8th edition of the Jaipur Literature Festival is to begin today. This year, too, a galaxy of literary and musical stars is expected to come together at the event. The organisers are expecting more than 2 lakh visitors this year. The event will be inaugurated by Rajasthan Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje. The theme of the event this year is Gender Equality in India. Well, we'll step into a short break now, but still to come on the program. India's tiger conservation efforts have paid off. Massive rise in population of the big cat according to the latest census. That and much more coming up. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, there is good news for the Indian economy despite the IMF downgrading the global growth outlook with the steepest cut in 3 years. The IMF said that the government's reforms have proved promising. It predicts the Indian economy to surpass China's projected growth rate in the next 2 years. Here's more.
The International Monetary Fund has put up a gloomy picture for the global economy next year. The IMF has predicted a sharp cut in its growth forecast for the global economy. The IMF pegged growth rate at 3.5% this year, after lowering it from the previous estimate of 3.8% projected in October. The growth forecast for 2016 has also been cut to 3.7%.
The oil price and the US growth are not a cure to deep-seated weaknesses elsewhere. Too many countries are weighed down by at least 2 factors, legacies of the financial crisis: high debt, high unemployment. Too many companies and households keep cutting back on investment and consumption today because they are concerned about the growth tomorrow.
The figures have raised fears ahead of the annual World Economic Forum at Davos. The forum said they will focus on dealing with the geopolitical challenges holding back growth.
Yes, we are worried because we expect a long-term decline of global growth. And so we have to deal with the issues to foster the growth on a global level. We have to deal with the challenges we see on the geopolitical level, for example, in Europe, in the Eurozone, but as well as the crisis in the Ukraine. We have also to deal with the Middle East issues, IS, Middle East, terrorism in North Africa.
However, it predicts the Indian economy will remain unaffected. India's growth forecast was broadly unchanged by the IMF. Rising from 5.8% in 2014, Indian economy will grow 6.3% in 2015 and 6.5% in 2016. Boost in trade and investments have helped offset weak external demand. It is set to catch up with China, which recorded its weakest growth in 24 years.
同时更要看到中国经济较长时期保持中高速增长，并向中高端迈进的潜力条件，特别是这个坚实的基础、不竭的动力和调控的。
The weak property market and high funding costs remain key risks that are facing the economy in 2015. The continuing weakening of the Eurozone has also added to the worries. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Joining me for a chat this morning on this very subject is the senior editor of the Economic Times, Himanshu Vats. Himanshu, very good morning and thank you for joining us on the program. Well, you know, it's definitely a bright spot as far as IMF's report is concerned. It is said that India will grow at a GDP of 6.5% in 2016, the fastest growing economy. That's great news, isn't it?
Yes, it's very good news for India, and you know, in terms of its standing in the global communities, but particularly among the emerging markets seeking investments, to be the fastest growing will be a very important milestone for India. But at the same time, one must remember 6.5 is not a spectacular growth rate. We are in a time where global economic growth is slowing down. The good thing is there's still some growth, but it is slowing down. And that is a concern for India because it affects our export market, it affects global demand, and which in turn has certain headwinds for the economy. So while in a relative sense, it's very good news for India to stand out as the fastest growing major economy, but the very fact that the global demand, global economy is slowing down is not good news.
What are the factors really that are going to influence this growth that the IMF is projecting?
See, if you look at global growth, there's a lot of economic turmoil around the world except the United States. China, as you've seen in the IMF reports, it is slowing down. The Eurozone is in a lot of trouble. There are problems in Greece, there are problems in some of the Nordic countries. Russia is under a lot of pressure because of sanctions and oil prices. Oil prices also hitting all the OPEC countries, the Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Venezuela, Nigeria. These countries have lost a lot of income, which directly translates into demands for goods and services around the world. Only yesterday, an Indian software company said in Davos that contracts with energy companies are not getting through because of the oil price slump. So these are the various factors. The demand in the overall global economy is not picking up as fast as it needs to.
Now, another aspect of it is, of course, can India sustain a growth or a rate of growth higher than China for a sustained period of time?
India can certainly sustain a higher growth rate. See, if you look at China, it's grown for a few decades with a investment-led, export-oriented model, where a lot of investment, new plants, becoming the factory for the world, and exporting goods all over the world has helped it grow. In India, our economy is slightly different. It's not so export-oriented as China is. The domestic consumption itself has contributed to a lot of growth. Now, China is looking at an economic model where domestic consumption and services become important, and it's also trying to go from a place where the brute high growth. From there, it is going towards a quality of growth. Whereas India is now, the current government's policy is taking it towards an investment-led growth. Now, in that situation, if the basic macroeconomic fundamentals are kept under control, your fiscal deficit is okay, and your inflation comes down, which is happening, with proper governance and economic management, I think India can very easily sustain much higher growth rates in China in the
all
long
right,
run.
Himanshu, what was absolute at that. Thank you so much for joining us with all those details there on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Moving on now, of course, stock markets, indices, BSE, Sensex and Nifty are likely to open at record highs today as the positive momentum from RBI rate cut continued for the fourth straight day on Tuesday. Upbeat corporate earnings and positive news from the Chinese economy pushed bank and metal stocks higher. Analysts say markets are building up on a high optimism ahead of the union budget. The government is expected to announce a slew of reform measures then to push growth. The NSE Nifty rose 157 points to hit the 8,700 level for the first time ever, while the BSE Sensex also surged over 550 points to a new high of 28,829 points on Tuesday. And here's a look now at the stock markets around the world. US stocks closed little changed on Tuesday after the International Monetary Fund reduced its growth forecast for 2015-16. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 3.66 points or 0.02% to close the day at 17,515. Standard & Poor's 500 index gained 3.12 points or 0.15% to end business at 2022. The Nasdaq Composite added 20.46 points or 0.44% to finish at 4,654. Gold prices surged by 190 rupees or 0.31% to end at 27,940 per 10 grams on Tuesday due to robust jewelry stockists offtake in the face of strong seasonal demand. Silver also jumped by 310 rupees or 0.77% to finish at 39,760 per kilogram on increased offtake by industrial units and coin makers. Well, the Asian markets were mostly on the front foot on Tuesday as speculation swirled that the European Central Bank will embark on a huge stimulus program. Japan's Nikkei was up by 48.49 points or 0.28% to close at 17,317. And Hong Kong's Hang Seng rose by 212.67 points or 0.90% to end the trading at 23,951. Moving on now for some good news for wildlife conservationists and tiger lovers. The tiger population in India has gone up by 30% between 2011 and 2014. In 2011, the number of tigers in the country was 1,706. By 2014, it reached 2,226. Referring to the census exercise, the Environment Minister said that it was unique in that never before had this exercise been taken at such a massive scale. 80% of the country's tigers have been photographed as part of the census. Tiger census is carried out every 3 years by the National Tiger Conservation Authority. According to the figures, Karnataka has the highest number of tigers in the age group of 1.5 years and more. The state has 408 tigers in that age group, followed by 340 in Uttarakhand, 308 in Madhya Pradesh, 229 in Tamil Nadu, 190 in Maharashtra, 167 in Assam, 136 in Kerala and 117 in Uttar Pradesh.
The latest estimate today is that India has 70% of the world's tiger population, and we have now 2,226 tigers presently in 47 tiger reserves, and this is a great achievement. It's a net increase of 30% over the last estimation.
Well, we'll take another short break on the program right now. On the other side, the big guns play their round 2 matches at the Australian Open today. We'll have that and much more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Back, you're watching Rajya Sabha television. Let's move to some international news now. The Indonesian government says that the Air Asia flight that crashed in the Java Sea climbed too fast, causing it to stall. 162 passengers on board were killed. As per radar data, flight QZ8501 had ascended at a speed of 6,000 feet per minute. Indonesia's transport minister said no passenger or fighter jet would attempt to climb so fast. He said it tried to climb faster than normal speed, then stalled. The Airbus A320-200 is thought to have encountered difficulties from an approaching storm. 53 bodies have been retrieved so far from the crash area, where debris was scattered across the sea. Data from the 2 black boxes is also being examined. Let's take a look now at some other news and updates from around the globe in our World Wrap. US President Barack Obama has started his annual State of the Union address to the United States Congress. The landmark agenda-setting speech is slated to propose tax hikes on the rich to fund benefits to working families and proposals community colleges, internet access, cyber security and sick leave. The proposals have to make it past a Republican-controlled Congress to move towards implementation. Ukraine has accused Russia of attacking its forces as fighting in eastern Ukraine spreads towards the Russian border. The military spokesman said that regular Russian units had attacked in the Luhansk region, much of which is under pro-Russian rebel control. Russia denies sending troops into Ukraine but acknowledges volunteers are fighting for the rebels. Terrorist group Boko Haram self-styled leader Abu Bakr Shekau has claimed the attack on the Nigerian town of Baga and more than 2,000 people were killed. The insurgents razed many buildings and homes in the week that followed, shooting civilians as they tried to flee. Local officials put the death toll as high as 2,000, although the military said it was 150. Reports from Yemen say Shiite Houthi rebels have bombarded the president's official residence and are trying to overthrow the government following another day of fighting and confusion in the capital, Sana'a. A Monday ceasefire crumbled after the Houthis surrounded the presidential palace to prevent their claimed weapons being taken from the complex. The whereabouts of President Hadi are unknown. We got some sports news now. Second round matches kick off today in the Australian Open on day 3 of the Australian Open. The match-ups become slightly more difficult and young players will be looking for their chance to shine among the galaxy of superstars. Roger Federer and Maria Sharapova will both be playing at the Rod Laver Arena, and underdogs like Nick Kyrgios and Eugenie Bouchard will look to make a statement after a strong 2014 season. No player comes into the Australian Open with more question marks than Rafael Nadal. The world number 3 still came away with a convincing first-round triumph over Mikhail Yuzny in straight sets and will face American Tim Smyczek. And finally, sand art is usually a feature of the sea beaches. Take a look at sand sculptures on the banks of the Ganges in Varanasi, created by school children and touching some topical issues. I'm going to leave you with these visuals. Have a nice day.